Thanks everyone for coming. It seems a little late to introduce you guys, but I'm going to introduce you again anyways. This is Isabel, Abascal, and Alessandro Arienzo from LANZA Atelier. Thank you again for coming tonight. As you know, they've been leading a trees workshop over the last 2 days at the School of Architecture at our Arcosanti campus, which has connected us to our landscape in yet another way. Participants in the workshop have been shadow casting and tracing trees on large sheets of fabric, not paper, that have been draped over the architecture at Arcosanti. Unfolding them into stunning projections and representations of the natural environment. It's been an amazing way to experience and see this place anew. Tonight's lecture presents an overhaul of LANZA's work, aims, challenges, and experiences from their founding in 2015. LANZA Atelier, based in Mexico City and Madrid, understands the architectural project as a constantly fluctuating process, which is subject to various forces, a malleable element. To me, their work harnesses and synthesizes cultural and spatial practices into evocative explorations of building, installation and exhibition, furniture and representation. A few of their many credentials include their participation in the 12th Sao Paulo Architecture Biennial in 2019, their nomination for the debut award of the Lisbon Triennial in 2019 as well, the 2016 Ibero-American Architecture Biennial Award, and the Mies Crown Hall Award for Emerging Architects. The studio is one of the winners of the prestigious Architectural League Prize of 2017, and they also had a solo show at the ASIC MoMA in 2018. We're also thrilled about their participation in Organic, an upcoming exhibition at TSOA that explores the range of meanings that are inspired by the term organic, opening April 16th. Without giving too much away, their contribution explores the histories, peoples, rituals, and artifacts as embedded meanings within translated elements of the natural landscape. So thank you, Isabel and Alessandro, for your generosity, for spending time with us over the past 2 days, and for sharing your work and thinking with us, the students, and the larger community. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Tristan, and thank you to the School of Architecture at Arcosanti for having us. We're thrilled to be here and share with you, more than a lecture, but actually like a life experience. It's been very beautiful so far. We're going to share some of our projects, trying to go back to where we started. Also because many of you are students who will graduate soon, and somehow it's always a moment in which you face the fact that you have become an architect, and now you have to decide what you want to do with all that knowledge. So in 2015, when we were just starting LANZA, we were invited to be part of a collective project based on the 5 Fundamental Acts by Super Studio. It was very nice that we were immediately invited to be part of the love theme. And we went back to the original Super Studio texts and somehow rewrote some of the extracts that had to do with our moment at that time, and how we have met, and our aims for LANZA, and how we saw life. So maybe we can just go through some of the sentences. we rewrote. I think we can start on the first part.
We fell in love as we belonged to different parts of the world. Under the influence of a machine, for a long time we lived far away. Occasionally we would meet in a random city, sleep together at a random place, and then separate again. Lodgings comprised hotels, strangers' houses, and public areas, depending on our budget at the point in the time. We would have liked to write to another describing what we had experienced in each of our encounters, but not one of the words in our vocabulary was suitable for describing that world. The adjectives are missing, in which love has been washed away from everything. Instead, we took photos of our sleeping accommodation, as we believed every time to be the very last. Once we drove for 5 consecutive days before reaching a tiny village in the middle of the Chiapas jungle. Should I continue?
That's fine.
You can continue reading.
This project is very significant to us because it already has inscribed in it one of our main interests, which is this idea of cataloging the world throughout our daily experiences. So we were actually photographing all these beds we were sleeping in, and each of them was special for some reasons, and somehow spatially they were all meaningful and interesting to us. And soon after, or somehow like in parallel to these trips we made as we were living in different countries, we got this project for the Mexican government, which consisted of some public toilets and shadow kiosks. This is actually our first build project, and I think we were not expecting to present it, but we learned Daniel is really interested in hygiene, so we definitely had to bring it to you today. And well, we always work with references that don't necessarily need to come from architecture, from the discipline of architecture, but could be cinema, could be contemporary art, could be mostly our daily walks throughout Mexico City. And in this case, we were very obsessed with the idea of making the border, the limit in between outside and inside more fluid.
So the situation here is a bike path in the outskirts of Mexico City, where they ask us for making to a series of bathrooms and kiosks, like places of shade for the whole bath. It's a 7-kilometer bike path, and the purpose of the bathroom, we understood it as making a public space instead of just having bathrooms, so people can actually meet in the bathroom. This is a drawing that explains a little bit of how many bathrooms and kiosk space we built. So the plan floor of the bathroom is sort of a swastika module that goes all around the 4 facades, and it's a common space where you just enter a single unit of bathroom with a skylight. So you enter the pavilion in the outside, but once you enter the toilet space, it's actually outside again. And I think all of these concepts we start to develop in the first projects. We never dropped them in the past. We always sum all of them, and we're starting to, or we think we're starting to create more complex concepts through the time. The kiosk always works in pairs. So this is another image of the bathroom. We're going to go a little bit fast because we put a lot of projects here. And I think it was an opportunity to show a little bit more of the full story. The benches are inside the block buildings. They have to be really low budget because it was like something they didn't think about they're going to have on the back path. So we developed a very single construction method. And yeah. This is very thrilled to show it here because Bettina is here, well, sort of this here, taking care of Leon. But once my grandmother moved from the house to a residency, I took care of all the pictures of my grandfather. And one day we started to play with the diapositivas,
The slides.
with the slides, and we started putting two in the same projector, and then you can focus one or the other, and then the focus or the images blend, no? And it was an interesting way of mixing things or like phenomenons of how we relate what we see. For example, here is like my grandmother with his family at the living space, but once you have a picture of the whole theater, it's like another space where they're having like spending their time. Or here was like a huge coincidence where the window was right where the other window was in the same picture, and there's like a completely different situation. So we believe architecture is always so surprising, and all the coincidences are there. We just have to be really aware of what's happening all around us.
And that idea of changing the focus point or the way how you look at reality, I think has also accompanied us till today.
So we started doing a lot of exhibition design, and this is one of our first exhibition design for a show called Gerso, Gerso, Gerso. Gerso is a Mexican painter who did all these abstract paintings of layering panels or like volumes or spaces. And so we, at that point, we thought this Alberto Aray Frontones in UNAM University was a really nice reference. At the beginning, we worked very hard with references to actually start having our own concepts. But we thought this way of making small spaces for one big exposition, because this exposition has 8 curators, which everyone talked about something about the painter. So we decided to make 8 spaces for each curator. And at some point, once you arrive to the exposition, you don't see the exposition, you see like a really abstract space where all the people are hiding. I don't know if I have a cursor.
You enter.
Yeah, I have a cursor. You enter through this space, so what you see is like a series of volumes, which we decided to build with
Straw.
pacas de paja. Yeah. So this is one of the most extreme challenges that we actually did, like construction site on a museum, and it was full of bugs, and like there was a lot of compromising because like to the art pieces, but we managed to make something extreme in a very strict space, and then we like tinted the whole thing with green, and you could see that there's nobody here, but like the whole show was inside these boxes. No? I remember once that I returned with like some drinks while we were mounting the whole exposition, and I was like, oh, they went away, and like they were inside working, and I was like, yeah, it's happening.
This is another exhibition design we did for a series of shows that were focusing on different foreigners that had visited Mexico throughout the 20th century and somehow contributed very strongly to culture. So the idea was that we could design something that would be reused on every show. And our proposal was a series of pieces that somehow adapted to the personality of each character. And for every new exhibition, we would design more panels. So every panel unfolds, opens, or rotates somehow to display different surfaces, either windows that open or tables that rotate, shelves. The shows were really on documentary material, and we wanted the panels to be able to store very easily. So actually, when the exhibition is finished, it's like 2 feet wide, like to store all of them. But when they are, like conquering the space, they really have this ability of creating rooms. Everything is done out of banac wood, which is a local Mexican wood we very much like, and brass. So the joints are brass, and they allow you to combine together 2 or 3 panels at a time. This was the first show on Jerzy Lotowski, a theater director from East Europe. And sorry, the last photo you saw. And because it had to do with theater, it was like a more of a dark and dramatic atmosphere. And the second show, which is this floor plan, was on Sir McCoy, an architecture critic and writer from California. So we wanted more of a 50s, 60s case study atmosphere.
It was also interesting that for each character we sum some characters to the biombo, no? So it was like an exhibition design that it was every time was summed by new panels, and the idea was to, like, after the fifth show it would be like a really big snake of panels, no?
Yeah, and the panels are really unstable on their own, but once you join them together, they become structurally stable. And this was the third show on John Cage. The fourth have been Annie Albers. Well, we hope it goes on. This is the first house we built from scratch. This one reference we had in mind, this idea of somehow having a ceremony around the trees that already exist there. This is the site on the green area in between the huge urban state of Mexico City and Toluca on the west. So it's like a 40 minutes drive from downtown and much more fresh than the city. So we were led by the client to this beautiful pine forest, and we wanted to somehow be able to design architecture around the forest, or choosing a piece of the forest and domesticating this area within nature to become the main room within the house.
It's also important to mention that the land of the house, it's in a private development, so we have a highway on the left side, like it's really noisy all the time, and the neighboring houses, not to make any judgment, but they're not like the best atmosphere. So we decided to have a house that looks for the inside, and to have we decided to develop like a concept of having a wall that goes all around the house and inside and outside. They asked us for a fence that the same wall acts as a fence. So we put like a rigid box where all the program lands. On this upper part is a living space, kitchen, diner space, small office, and on the back part is the bedrooms, and they will have like a private patio. We also decided to make the full house of one single material because of the wall that goes inside and outside all the time. We thought that with time and the weather of the site, the house will blend in a little bit of this green of moss, ¿cómo se dice? Moss. So the house will be changing from green to golden, like in the season of the year. The house is mainly one level.
The second volume is
the guest and like other activities have 2 floors. And
what is very nice about this section is that you can see the concrete slabs curving up to let the south light get in not only on the first body of living room and kitchen space, but also inside the bedrooms since the morning. And this is the cast work to receive the concrete.
Yeah, something is very important to understand is in Mexico City, like in the United States, everything is more industrialized, or you have like more machines building the houses. And here, what the most amazing thing of Mexico is the handcraft. So you have the ability to actually make use of that.
And we truly believe this house, I mean, it's very local because it was so linked to the local ability to craft the brick in a very artisanal way. So as you see, the outer facade is almost completely blind, and then inside you have these zenithal openings throughout patios that offer you this view of the pine trees and the sky. And then towards the inner garden or patio, whatever you want to call it, you have these huge openings. This is this is the wall that we have seen working as a lattice or as a fence, and inside the house it operates as a corridor. When it comes out, sometimes it becomes two walls, and you have this again this corridor, but connecting the main family volume with the guest area. And this is when we were talking about the concrete slabs. Somehow they let this sunlight in, and also the moonlight. That we learned from the client about the moon.
So the next project is a chef asked us for making a table for their pop-up dinners. So the business of him is like they gather a lot of like strangers together to have to share a meal, and we really wanted to make a table thought as a building. So in this case, we started making the first sketches as a elevation, and once you turn out this sketch, it's actually a table that goes stepping. So the real thing is like you actually change the space around the table because it affects the perspective. So, and also changes the subtic of the people having the dinner, so you can actually see more of the people in the table. And they were always worried about what they're gonna eat, and when they arrived to this, that didn't care anymore. They're like, where are they gonna sit, and if they're gonna be comfortable, or if it's gonna be, I don't know. They had a lot more of concern. I thought it was very interesting.
Because sitting very low, you can see this waterfall of cutlery and glasses and knives. And when the table is not used, it becomes quite often an abstract object. You don't really understand what it is. And then when it's activated, it really shows what it's capable of.
And then we've been asked to do another table in the same place, but in the garden, which had trees. And then we decided to make like a curved steps table. And so that's like a way of we always like continuing the idea. Like it's important never to drop some ideas and start new ones. I mean, you have to reuse and like to make it better all the time, so you can actually gain something more interesting with it.
And also throughout our practice, like being based in Mexico and being a young office. I mean, for example, the snake table, it cost like $500 and it was produced in less than 1 week. So somehow during the first years of our practice, and I think maybe until now, we have dealt a lot with really small budgets and really small time frames. And somehow it has, forced us to don't be scared to produce and to do it.
Yeah, and also I think one of like the most important things is like not to give any hierarchy to certain projects. You have to take the projects as equal and as important as like a skyscraper or whatever, or a table. So right now we already started constructing Dahlia House. It's another house in the same place as the forest house, and in this case the trees are very present, and we have a slope of 35%. So
really inclined.
And because of the reglamento, like the rules of the development, you cannot fly boxes or whatever. So you have to land everything on site. So we decided to have the trees inside the house in some way. And to do that, we have first we have to make like 2 platforms and like huge rock walls that because of the carving, all the rock that we carved away, we build the walls with the same material at the same time almost. And there's no way of taking the ground out and, for example, making a concrete wall, because in that matter, all the earth will fall down because it's not like a stable ground. So we carve all the rock, and we're starting to put the rock, and then cover again, and we put the rock. And that's the constructive method. That's why this drawing is very interesting, because that wall is 1.5 meters wide, and without buying any new material.
Like 5 feet.
And then the house, you can see, well, this facade, I will start with this one. These two big trees, the main trees of the house, are in the exact center of the whole site. So we decided to put the house in the middle, because too much high. So if we put it higher, it would be very difficult to arrive to your house. And if it's lower, you miss the views. So in this case, we decided to put it in the middle where the trees were, where the trees are, and to make a curved wall that actually separates or connects the full public space of the house. It's kitchen, and dining space, and the living space. We have a full cycle with the staircase, so the house is completely walkable.
And it's the geometry of this wall that allows this unique space to have 3 different moments and feel like 2 different things.
The first level is the body of the rooms. It's like a all full wood construction. So the rocks work as a continuous wall for the full site, and then we just land simple wooden cabins in this manner. The rooms have mezzanines, and the rooftop of the first level is actually the outside space for the house to do it's almost like an experiment of doing the same activity as a covered space, but in outside space. We always work with models. Like we believe that models and drawings are the most basic and most important ways of working architecture, because they're so malleable, and like we sometimes leave the models outside to see what their son is doing to them, or actually just to have them in the studio so you can get tired of them and understand what needs to be changed.
That happens a lot.
We believe that if you have the files in your computer all the time, you don't see the project, you don't see the ideas, and you cannot connect one project with another because it's forgotten.
And well, construction has started already, so we can be posted. This is a project we built in Madrid, in Spain. We were asked to do some kind of intervention on this building, which became the Mexican Cultural Center in Spain. And we were interested into this idea of somehow the building itself has a very complete character, like a very Madrid personality. And when Mexico appropriates it, we wanted to erase that face and give it a new image. So we're working with the idea of mask, somehow trying to blur the architecture that already existed and make it less visible, more porous.
And there was something interesting here, because they always telling us that people don't approach to this cultural center because it's actually pretty interesting, but people are kind of shy of entering, or they don't even like understand there's something going on. So our main objective was to actually touch the people in the streets, to say coming in and we're having something going.
So we came up with this idea of steel ball chain that would be hanging from 15 meters high, so 45 feet high, towards the ground level. So when people is walking throughout the street, they touch the facade, and you can see the movement from the upper levels. And that way you're connecting the passersby with the people working inside. And I mean, you're facilitating this interaction between the architecture and the public, which is, I mean, actually the citizens, which are not even the public.
We'll show you the video later.
Yeah, I forgot to say that.
This next show is an exhibition design show. So we did this for storefront for art and architecture in New York in COVID times, almost the last part of last year. And they always do like a donors dinner party, so they can actually have the fundraising. And in this case, they couldn't do that, but they needed the money. So the curators start talking with us like what we could do. At the same time, he was cleaning the full basement of the gallery, because like it was like full of past stories and exhibitions. And so he was trying. He invited around 36 architecture studios to make some pieces or models with that material he has in the basement, and he wanted to sell those pieces. And at the same time, all the exhibition design, once you buy the piece, you also take a little piece of the exhibition design.
They were playing with like a board game with this idea of buying a table. The donors will be actually taking it home. And we wanted to conquer the gallery space from one edge to the other. I mean, it's kind of a narrow and long and small space. And we wanted to touch both edges with many pieces that collaborate together. They are individual, but when they are set up together, they work as one.
The space is very narrow. It gets like a trompe-l'oeil because the perspective goes like a really small space at the end. And the full facade of Vito Conchi and Peter Eisenman, it's a completely foldable facade, so that's where the curves appear. And well, we like to think about this exhibition design as a marimba, that of all the musical instruments that we know, the marimba is the only one best played by the group. So the reference about a marimba and making this table was perfect in that sense. And it's also nice to know that the tables are different and all together build the one thing. And this is just like
some of the different tables
that they were all just without any screws to put together. It's also important because we changed the level a little bit between each table, so you can understand where each piece has its space, but also to maximize the trompe-l'oeil of the space itself. So when you arrive, the tables are like at 1.40, I don't know the feet, sorry. And at the end, they're very low, and you barely realize that they go lower and lower.
We then bring many photos, but there was a piece by Stephanie at the office. This pavilion, we forgot to write it down. Which we collaborated with 3 architects. One of them is also a sculptor. So Carlos Facio, Jose Amos Urrutia, and Alberto Deris. And this was actually supposed to happen in this beautiful park, which has a pond of water. And we were really interested and somehow attracted, enchanted by this water condition, which for us referred to Mexico City, to Tenochtitlan, harmony between land and water. So we wanted to do a pavilion that truly happened at the water level. And on the other hand, this happened a couple of 2 years, a couple of years after the 2017 earthquake, in which many villages had been, been quite affected and many buildings destroyed. So we wanted to use a material, in this case earth blocks, like pressed earth blocks, that could be used for the pavilion without any mass or cement, and then just dismounted and sent to one of these places called Oquila in the state of Mexico, and used for some other building that was necessary there.
Yeah, so the pavilion was thought for using the budget of building this pavilion to get those blocks, and after the pavilion send them to this place. And so with this project, I think we understood, and also with Cajalpa House, but more with this one, because there is any type of mortar or whatever putting the bricks together, we just understood how when they build these bricks, how they put them to get them dry, and that's also the most structural way to having them without any mortar. So we just use that detail and build this path towards floating rock. We work with an artist to build this pavilion, so that's the topping of the pavilion. That it's quite interesting because of the. I'll go back to this one. Because of the, you only can see the rock from like a front view, so you don't see any perspective, but it has like a counterweight, so the rock is always like levitating, and it was very interesting, for example, for the kids because they couldn't understand anything, or even the adults.
And for the architect.
We always play jokes to the kids like, be careful because once you enter this zone, you can levitate a little bit, and it was quite amazing, like the effect of actually working with an artist.
And there was some magic to the architecture itself because the walls are 2 feet wide, which is quite wide, but because of the holes that the earth blocks have to have for the pressing machine, they were the walls were permeable at the same time, so you could look through them despite them being so massive and so heavy.
And I think one of the lessons is also once you arrive to this between these two walls, the whole noise of the city like blurs away. The climate is different. There's like more humidity, and it's quite a lesson to like with a really simple thing. If you understand it, you can change a lot of like the atmosphere you're around.
This is another ephemeral project we did in Spain, in a city in the north called Logroño, and we were invited to pick up any place within the city. We were very shy in the beginning because there's a town hall by Rafael Moneo that we very much love, and also it has these absolutely slim columns, and because this would be absolutely impossible to do in Mexico, you cannot definitely have a thin column. So we had this, or with this image as a reference, and when they told us pick up whatever side, we were like, maybe the town hall square. And it's interesting because the project was designed during the last part of the Spanish dictatorship, which was very long and cruel. And what is nice is that this building was designed for being a public and permeable building, even during this time in which people were not allowed to walk in the street in more than pairs. So we admire the geometry of the plaza and everything, but at the same time, after 40 years, it had become a very, very dry square, a bit too big and somehow difficult to inhabit for it became just a bit too big for a human scale. So we wanted to narrow it down, and by using these 3 circular shapes, we wanted to change the fluxus, the circulation throughout the square, which today mainly happens down the pergolas, and we wanted to somehow force the people to inhabit the center of the square and encounter each other.
And also one main objective was to erase some square meters, like surface area of the plaza. So that's why there are circles, there are any access to them. You can jump because in this time we did architecture with furniture because it's like a really huge benches all the square. So it was interesting how the kids looked around the circles or entered the circles and they were contained, and at the same time the people start walking inside the plaza. No? People approached to us and it's like, I never walked in the center of this plaza and I've been living here for all my life.
Mm-hmm. And again, we wanted to use the same strategy of just stocking the bricks on top of each other without any cement, so that after the festival they could be reused for something else. And yeah, it was nice, like the very old people who just want to sit there and catch some sun could finally sit on a very long, 3 very long benches. And of course the younger people were like having fun and running around them and inside.
It's very important also of all these ephemeral installations not to make any trash or try to be like the most clean way to build, because in this case the festival lasted 2 days. So it was like, okay, this is a huge space and it's gonna only last 2 days. How can we build something faster than the 2 days and without leaving any trace of garbage?
These are some of the events like that took place during this time. And this a smaller little house on the coast, again on an inclined plane, overlooking the sea, but not really having a direct view of the sea.
It's around here. So we're next to a cliff. This is a river, and the site is on a cliff, also on a mountain, but it has like a cliff. Doesn't have a view to the sea. But like, it's again like a very inclined building, and it's a weekend or like a quarantine house. So it's all wooden structure. It's like an elevation. I started with an elevation because that's the way we started thinking this house. And it's a full grade that never touches the ground, and it has a full roof that makes the whole modules a full space, like a one space house. So at the beginning you have like the parking, and the staircases are on the one side of the building. That it's a line of staircases that actually make the feeling of the house bigger. And in the middle you have a bathroom for everybody, and the next level is the
Yeah.
Well, it's a living space, and then it's like a small, like another room.
We missed that floor plan.
This place is also very near to a town called Cochutla. It's a very industrial city. So once construction starts, it's going to be very interesting, the contrast between the wood and the typical like local construction with some elements, industrial elements.
For the roof.
All the facade is permeable. All the walls are like, we can open, they're like wooden curtains.
And the entrance is from below, so when you arrive there, you don't really see the whole size of the house. You just kind of this abstract facade, which is a roof itself. And when we came back, we were almost finishing. We came back to this photo of one of the beds. We were cataloging because one of these trees we made many years ago was to the Lacandon jungle in Chiapas, already next to Guatemala. And a couple of years ago, we were invited by a biologist she has been like leading the jaguar monitoring project for a decade now. And she was working on a little museum for the jaguar and the tapirs, and we were invited to work on the exhibition design, but somehow we took most of our projects are an opportunity for research and for experimenting, but in this case we were confronting a completely new context, so we gave a lot of importance to the idea of research. And well, we're talking here about this this situation in which we believe the jungle is, of course, being destroyed in every part of the world, but at the same time, the vernacular architecture of its original inhabitants, it's also being destroyed, and all this knowledge is being lost. And well, in the ancient nomadic lifestyle of the Lacandon ethnic group, their traditional wooden and palm buildings, as well as the clay figures with which children played, had the ability to fully return to the jungle once they were no longer used. And in Mexico, at least since the 70s, many governmental programs give the so-called poor people building materials, and they are mainly steel plate, like this kind of undulated steel plate for the roofs, and concrete block. So what happens is that, for example, this ethnic group, the Lacandons, they usually build their roofs with palm, But when they start getting this steel plate for free, well, it's faster, it's less work. They don't have to change the palm every 2-3 years. So they just start using it, and it creates a dependence to this material and to these programs. And finally, after some years, they have to start buying it because they don't get it from free anymore. And the same with the concrete block and the original wooden blocks. So finally, instead of having houses that completely blinding and completely return to the jungle once they are not used, because they belong to the jungle and they are just natural materials, they are creating all this trash. And these are the public programs that are supposed to protect the local culture. So anyways, we wanted to work with, again, with a local material. And it's a local cane called caña brava. It's like slimmer than bamboo. And we wanted to be able to produce as much of the exhibition design as possible with the same material. So we actually were learning from them when to cut it, how to dry it, how to work with it. And of course, there is the authorities of this Lacandon settlement were expecting us to present the project, and they were voting if they wanted it or not. So we did this, again, this hand drawings and model presentation, which we believe are somehow able to interact and to speak to every listener without architecture background. And we finally created inside the hut that already belongs to the Protected Parks Net institution, this little forest of caña bravas, of canes, with this huge 6 feet by 6 feet central table on top of which all the exhibition materials were displayed, meaning jaguar and tapir skeletons, and photos and some information. But it was important to us to be able to work with a community on a different level, also because our work is in grosso modo divided in between public clients, which can be public museums or the government itself, and private clients. And being at the jungle presented us to a different way of deciding things collectively. We were there to learn as much as possible from their way of doing things.
So from the first experience of doing the exhibition design of this space, we realized that they all gather on this space, that it was like subutilizado, like they just use it for the meetings, but when they don't have any meetings, they don't use the space at all. Maybe the kids use it a little bit, and they always have these 2 tables where the leaders of the community sit and like talk with them. Then we realized that maybe we could also do something for this space, and so we developed a furniture that hosts like a series of tables for kids where they can actually have workshops for the community. Then we proposed to change those tables for this table with the same wood, with the same carpenter.
Also because as part of the Jaguar and Tapir Museum program, there was a series of workshops that couldn't take place inside because of the pandemic. So we wanted to propose them to happen outside, and therefore we needed some furniture. Yeah. I forgot to bring my cell phone, so I didn't know if we were too long or too short.
I don't know if you have any question or whatever you want to say. Now's the time, or
or never, or tomorrow.
So for that project that was an exhibition, you said you used straw.
Mhm.
Why did you choose that?
We wanted to create, again, very, very thick walls as a reference to the idea of pre-Hispanic architecture, but also because straw would create some, in terms of sound, it would isolate you from what is outside. So each of the 9 modules is very open, but when you somehow enter them, they block the light from both glass facades. But in terms of auditive, like
Sound,
audio,
yeah.
of sound,
Yeah.
they also isolate you.
When we arrived, sorry for the
Yeah.
interruption, but when we arrived to the space, the whole south wall was covered in tabla roca, like panels,
Right.
so the first thing we said, like, we need to rescue this space, so we opened that full facade to enter to have the sun again entering, and because it was interesting because that building is in between a pre-Hispanic ruin and a modernist building, so it was the relationship between 2 times in the history of Mexico.
We didn't.
And then we opened that wall, and they were all concerned, like if you open that, what are we going to do with the sun?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then we proposed to do this C-shaped walls to protect from
And you said there were issues with like bugs and the
Yeah.
art. Like,
Yeah.
it's I hope we never stop having those things, but it's we inaugurated the show, and after 2 days, bugs started to come out. So it was quite amazing because you had this Lucio Fontana cut, or painting,
Yeah.
and there were actually bugs around it and inside, and they had to close the show. They had to
Yeah.
what was he saying?
Take the works out, fumigate, and.
Oh wow, yeah.
But we didn't dedicate enough time to each project. That this building, which today is a public museum from UNAM University, it's called Tlatelolco, is where in 1968 the army shot the students and killed many, many students. But it's a historical site, a pre-Hispanic historical site, and also this building used to be the Foreign Affairs Ministry, and it was transformed into a museum. So we wanted to rescue all this information, and as Sandro said, connect the modern Foreign Affairs Ministry with the pre-Hispanic plaza.
And projects also, there's a space for your own concerns and for your own experimentation. So in this case, we wanted to use that material for making a thick and heavy experience of walls, but not like an empty wall. So, and there was all these issues we just talked about.
Was it like plastered with?
It was plastered.
Mixed with pigment.
No, it was a little bit of cement.
Okay.
Sand, like earth,
Yeah,
sand
yeah.
and cement. The main curator, the chief curator of the show was James Soltz, and he invited these other 8 Mexican curators. And after this, he invited us to a competition for an exhibition design at the National Palace, and he told us, well, now you know I want high tech, I don't want to show. So we did something completely different out of steel, and it's steel structure and then hanging panels. Also because we knew he likes to change things from place to place on the last minute. So we had these hanging panels that allowed him to do that. So somehow I think we're like a very reactive practice and don't have a formula.
I think in the vein of that, I'm wondering about what your relationship to materiality is and how you approach materials. Every project in the pattern industry, there was a cohesive look, all of them, but they were all out of very different materials. I wonder what your relationship to that is and what that process is.
I think we don't have any preference of any material. I mean, we prefer natural, and tabla roca is forbidden in the studio, for example, fake panels, fake walls. But I think we have to understand that the material you have around is the material you have to use. I think as an architect, a difference from an artist, for example, is that you don't choose your things. You have to be aware what you have around, and you have to work with certain things, and you have to accommodate yourself to learn from that.
Yeah, somehow the pressure on tight budgets helps you to realize you gotta work with it's at hand and it's there and with the expertise that already exists at the place. So whatever material can somehow accommodate a concept and an idea.
So sort of related to that in some way, like I think that one of the things that is really striking about the similarity between the projects is the economy of means, the ability to really stretch a project budget, to like achieve something. And like it's incredibly admirable. And there's so few architects that I can name that do that, right? So it's like maybe Marlon Blackwell kind of does that in some of his projects, using materials that are there and that kind of thing. But like for such a young firm, it feels like you'll have so many amazing projects. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm so wondering, is there like a strong connection between this, the stretching of project budgets and maybe knowing that y'all are really able to like capture a really great idea fairly cheaply, and like is that getting y'all more and more projects, or is it just like every project has a limited budget and y'all just manage to do what y'all can with what y'all have every time y'all approach something?
Limited budget and limited time. So I think if you have more time, you can experiment different ideas and like make more mistakes in the process, and then you just go back and start again, or you just move forward. Or if you have less time and you just have to take more risks, and you have the strength of getting it done. And I don't know, that's our struggle, like always. No, I think after 5 years, we don't know more or less than when we started. We just keep understanding everything at the moment, because every client, every site, every budget, it's a new place where you land, and the just ability of being aware again and working and redrawing and listen to your guts.
And also, for example, me as a foreigner in Mexico, what I feel grateful and I really appreciate is that in compared to what young American practices or young American architects from the States face, somehow it is quite difficult for a young architect in the States to accomplish building, right? I mean, in Mexico, so many things need to be done. You are given opportunities, yes, because there's a lot of little spaces that need to be filled in, and somehow the informality that can be regarded as something bad or difficult to deal with also gives you some freedom to experiment.
It becomes a tool also.
Yeah.
I grew up with informality, and we can fix things like we can do this.
We're always very inspired by things we encounter also on the street. For example, you don't want anybody to park in front of your restaurant, so you just put together a couple of bricks with a piece of wood and some, plastic bag on top, and it can look horrible, but it can look really amazing. So, this creativity that you encounter out of need everywhere, I think informs Mexican architecture a lot, like in many levels.
Yes.
I was asking a question for one of our students who's doing some work around John Cage, and just wanted to maybe hear more about the process of designing the exhibition that eventually hosted a John Cage show. Was that anticipated, or was it something that was paired after the fact?
We never knew in advance which characters the shows were going to be about, and actually for the John Cage exhibition, the museum were curatorially with our help, and I think we were pleased that the architecture system was so easy to deal with, but it was very obvious for the curators how to inhabit it. The main difference with the first and second, towards the third, which is your case, yes, the Dostoevsky and McCoy, was that it happens in a different room, which is the not the ground floor, but the basement, and it has this very striking marble flooring, which is also an artist's artwork. So I think there the exhibition materials on Cage competed more with the context, and we can put him in contact with the,
Yeah,
the
it seems like a
curators.
very natural pairing,
Yeah.
but I also
Yeah, we.
maybe it wasn't known to bring
Yeah. I think, yeah, somehow the biombo, we call it, is, easy enough to deal with, but it was open to receive any kind of documental material. So there was, for example, no sound involved, which maybe it's very caged, but maybe but it worked absolutely without any need for the architect.
With your project with the round benches with the bricks, what happened to the bricks afterwards?
They were, some of the curators set like an ad, like on social media, that people could come and take bricks away. And a small percentage of them were given away to the, let's say, citizens, but many of them returned to the brand that had donated them.
They lend us the bricks and we just return them to later.
And like surprisingly, very little percentage was broken. Yeah. There were many volunteers helping us, like a team of, I don't know, 10, 15 people, and they were very good. And I mean, for myself at least, working 2 days on site, just piling up bricks was so meditative. It was like, it was great. It was 10,000 bricks. 10,000 bricks.
You guys mentioned that like 3D models don't allow you to kind of see weathering and to compare them to the physical ones. So is building physical models something you guys have always done for every project or exhibition?
There's also a rule in the studio that every project needs their own model, or at least one. And models are so interesting. I mean, whatever happens to the model is probably this is going to happen to the building. The model. If it's unstable, the model, probably the building is unstable. And we also have like a rest, like a resting model. Like we build a model and we leave it on just to like breath, like to inflate. And when we just leave it in the studio, once you're happy about it, we leave it, because if the house or the model are not telling you anything and you're still looking at it and you like it, it's probably on the good path. But if it's bothering you and it's like something making noise, you have the ability to actually realize that there's something wrong about it. And then you can start dealing with it later and again and again. So, and you can feel a lot of things in the model. It's not, maybe there are people being happy with their 3D models and whatever, but I think they become more like a software geeks more than architects.
We do produce 3D models by the end of a project to create some finishing collages. I don't know. Someone wants to explore the bathroom ideas. But what we have realized is that we can be much more tricky when using 3D models. Like we have that power over the client, or I mean, the client can be an anonymous client. No? So somehow it's like with physical models, you cannot trick anybody. I mean, the truth is there, and you are forced to be very, very honest. And somehow, maybe we dislike, that power we get when using 3D models, like you can, like swiftly, like talk about yourself more highly. I don't know.
I mean, it's also like what do you like? I like the sun. So having the sun inside the model is like actually dealing with the elements of the world. No? Como, I mean, we cannot shrink and feel the wind maybe on the models, but you can actually feel the shades and the sun and how you can play with different hours. It's pretty easy and like very dynamic. And you always see the full three-dimensional. Like you see the space, you don't see like a flat. Like a screen, because you actually start looking at the same scenes maybe on the model, the perspectives you take care about. But we're not building images, we're not building moments. We're building the space. That I think that the workshop today, one interesting thing is that the sun moves so fast that we couldn't even do the drawing as fast as the earth moves. So making a space means thinking about a broader way of understanding weather and sun and what's the best way of having a functional and amazing spatial space for having a soup.
I want to ask just about y'all's collaboration and like how well does that work? Like, is it always smooth sailing all the time?
It's never smooth. I think first it's easy. It's easier to have one relationship than two. So, wife plus partner, check. That's easier. You can talk about the project anytime, anywhere. It's perfect.
I think we started more trying to assume the same role, like the chief designer. I don't know if there's a name for it. And throughout these years, we have naturally or forcefully swifted a bit, like trying to incorporate more our own interests and focusing a bit more on how can we contribute to the office. Also helped by the fact that more people have started to collaborate and work with us. I mean, many of these people come and go and maybe stay for a couple of years and then leave. But also the fact that they are there and they are part of the team is inspiring in terms of trying to assume a role and contributing as much as possible from that perspective.
And yeah, at the beginning we were just only Isabel and myself, doing everything. And we both need to be really involved in the one project we had at the time. And then once you continue, after 7 years, you have like maybe 5 projects at a time or sometimes more.
12.
And you have to be really sensitive and like to see where you can make something or where you can just leave it a little bit behind you. And so nowadays we have developed like the roles in the studio, and Isabel gets really involved in the conceptual part, but then the studio needs to develop everything of that, and Isabel teaches, and we just like studio all the time. So it actually helps to have like a nice combination between partners. I think it would be impossible if both of us do the same thing, think the same thing, and seek the same thing. Yeah, I always talk about this, like if I would be like a architect by myself, I would clearly know what I would project, what I would achieve in the project, whatever. But having a partner, for example, with Isabel, I never know what we're gonna do, and so that's kind of a stressful thing. But that's also the most fun part, or the most adventurous part of making architecture with a partner.
And it's beautiful, maybe like counterfeiting this idea of like very 90s idea of star architect and like I don't know, a white male doing everything by himself. I think what is nice about having an office is that you understand and you believe in that practice being better than yourself, better than your partner, like better than any of the ones involved. And I mean, you try to somehow respect that more than, maybe even more than your own opinions. Like, okay, maybe in this case, I could do this, but what would LANZA do? I mean, it's not maybe as radical as that, but more or less.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like, there's been a big shift in naming conventions from, Diller, Scapidia, Rinfa to, firms that are named, something a little bit more abstract that is often not after the founder. I think it makes total sense.
It goes back to the thing I said, that we as an architect, I don't think we should make decisions by what we want. It's like taking reactions of, like, you study and you see and like you react. It's not about making judgment if it's good or like if you like pink or not. The project needs to be pink. I'm sorry, and that's it. I like pink.
We haven't
This is
shown
an example.
we haven't shown a little building that is fully pink, but
Thank you so much. Thanks for